Well, Carmen, I am so excited for this conversation today. You know, we call them interviews, but I really love to call them conversations because what it is me helping highlight how extraordinary I believe you are. And I know that sometimes the person on the other side, the guest, kind of feels a little bit like, what do you mean I'm extraordinary? Let me pause and really think about this. And I purposely do it this way because I want to have people feel themselves, see themselves in someone else's story. Because we often won't recognize it in ourselves, but boy, it's easy to see it in others. So thank you for joining us today for this conversation. It's just such a privilege to have you here. I'm excited for everybody to get to know you better. So why don't you start with telling us where you're from and of course your name, and then what is a belief that you have that you're bringing to today's conversation?
Wow. So yes, my name's Carmen Walsh, and I live in Pennsylvania. Actually, grew up in Maryland, but not too far away in Pennsylvania now. And a belief that I'm bringing to today's conversation would be that we are all eternal souls. And
Love
that
it.
eternal word has a lot of oomph to it, It can come up in a lot of different ways. So
It can. And let's dive right into that. Knowing that this group is filled with extraordinary women making extraordinary moves. Sometimes they recognize it, sometimes they don't yet recognize that extraordinary move. What do you feel this conversation that you just spoke of? Like, how is that related?
yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I didn't expect it to come out either. So, yeah, and I definitely fall into that bucket you're talking about thinking that, yeah, really, am I extraordinary? I know I don't see what other people see. So I'm looking forward to this conversation for that reason too. Being an eternal soul. Um, To me, it can do so many things. One is for myself, I know I've put a lot of pressure on myself to achieve things, to prove my worth. Um, and having the awareness of being an eternal soul, one, makes this lifetime a blip, right? I mean, really, 80, 90, 100 years in the scope of eternity is nothing.
Okay, so I love where you went with this right now because it's true. We put so much pressure on ourselves to get it right. Like, I have a short amount of time and I gotta frickin' make it work and make it count and do all the things.
Absolutely.
And
I
what
have
if
that.
you
I so
couldn't get
have
it?
that.
Yeah. And what if you couldn't get it wrong? Like, it's impossible to get
Yeah.
it wrong. And
Yeah.
what if we're here just playing it and having this creation? I love where you went with this because I know a little bit about you and a little bit behind the scenes. So I'll guide our conversation there a little bit more, but I want to hand it back to you to add to that.
Yeah, I literally was rereading. I channel these downloads sometimes, and I was to get myself up for this call. I was like, I'm just gonna reread a couple of these. And it literally just read those words like, you can't get it wrong, right? There are no wrong decisions. There are only different consequences, right? It's not right or wrong, it's just different. And this is your life to do with it whatever you want. This is your adventure. This is this is God living through us. He's like, "Hey, your version. Let's do it. I want to see what we can do."
Okay. Now this brings me back to the conversation that I was thinking about where, your art and your creativity and your really that message of unconditional love. Well, I don't believe we can be creative if we feel so much pressure on ourselves. We put ourselves in a box. Is this right? Is this wrong? Is this good? Is this bad? Really like pulling back those layers and speaking from this message of you can't get it wrong. I'm here to help you express yourself and allow yourself to just really shine speaks right back into this conversation about being extraordinary.
That's true. Yeah. And I have definitely been one of those that have judged myself very harshly most of my life, you know,
Yeah.
high expectations and usually actually meeting them for other people, from other people's perspectives, doing very well at
Yeah.
things and but not living my life,
Yeah.
right? Not living the
I-
life I would love.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's go to a place of like, what are you doing right now? Who are you serving? And how is that passion being played out in your life?
Hmm. Um, so right now I do have a full-time job. So there's that.
Yeah.
And what I'm really focused on right now is I have dived back into my art. Um, I take photographs and I make art out of them. So, um, and you can do art in any way you want, right? There is no wrong way to do art. And I never even called myself an artist until about a year ago. I've
Well,
been selling my photography art for 12 years.
I'm only giggling at her because it's so relatable to me. I'm selling art, I'm making art, I am making profit from my art, but I'm not an artist. I remember the first time I called myself an artist, it was a growth opportunity. So thank you for reminding me that just a year ago, your identity shifted to the place of like, wow, I'm an artist because you actually do photography and you also do music. Am I
Yeah.
correct?
Yes. Yes. I started writing music in about the same time period of a year or so, I guess a couple years, and that was something that terrified me. Like I remember having the thought that was several years ago, and I was playing piano and I just like other people's music, right? And I had this thought of it'd be really cool to sing my own music. And it was just a thought, literally a thought. I did not say it to anybody. I did not write it down. It terrified me. I thought, I can't do that. I mean, I grew up in a family of musicians, like we all played when we were younger. My
Yeah.
my mom is still a church organist,
Yeah.
and yet I was terrified of writing music. It's like just that aspect. I was like, I couldn't possibly, right?
Wow.
But it was in there, that desire. And so actually it's really easy.
It's
It's
really
fun.
easy. Okay, so now let's go back to the belief of like, I can't possibly do this. Do you feel that this was society telling you that you needed to fit in a certain box, or was this you hadn't ever seen it done before? So you're like, how can I be the first? Can you take us through your thoughts there?
Yeah, yeah, I can. And this was definitely it was a more internal thing, right? I had been around what I thought were real musicians, right? That knew how to improv because I could read music and play. I didn't know how to improvise, so that terrified me when I was high school. That was terrifying to me. So I was like, oh no, stay away from that. So I was afraid to do anything where I could make a fool of myself,
Mm,
right? So I just stayed away from it. So I think this was the same kind of thing because I do know people who write music and they can sit down and they can just do all this stuff off the cuff. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So I can't possibly. I can't sit in the same room with them. Like I can go listen to them, but I can't improvise. I don't know how to write, like all these things. All of this whole list of things I can't do,
yeah, I hear it.
right? And I had to get beyond that to be like, I don't have to do it the same way everybody else does, right? I can do it my own way. And that's what it ended up happening, right? Is I just would write lyrics and And then I woke up one morning actually with this little tune in my head. And I recorded it and whatever, and it was a terrible song. But you know, but I shared it, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, like I had no idea that you did that." And I'm like, "I don't think I do. I don't think that actually qualifies." Because right, because I'm judging it. I'm judging the quality all the time.
Yeah.
And so I had to get past judging it and just do it for the sheer pleasure of doing it.
Which, I mean, if we go back to your original comment, your original message, your wish, your original thing you wanted the world to know is that we are unique and this creativity in us is just for us. And if we do that, the being perfect at it really can let go of it.
Yeah.
I just love how so much has transformed in you. And so this light inside of you just continues to grow bigger and bigger and brighter and brighter. Let's talk a little bit about your soul chats. That's a unique concept of its own. And I'd like to start with a little bit of like, what is it? But how did it start for you?
Let's see, how did it start? Oh, so I was actually on a Zoom call with a whole big group of women. It was one of Maya's events, and someone was sharing that, she was just like, I don't think there's ever going to be a guy for me. Like, she's just not going to work, blah, blah, blah. All these beliefs about not finding the right guy. And Maya's like, you should talk to Carmen. Because I had come through this whole process of I went through the same thing, years of terrible relationships, unhealthy, and finally did manifest, love of my life. And so that's what she was thinking and suggesting that the two of us talk. And so I reached out to her. She's like, sure, yeah, reach out. And it was just gonna be a conversation, That is actually how it started, was it was just gonna be a conversation with somebody else who had something that they were going through, right? And what I discovered is that I do have an ability to hold the space of unconditional love. And what I realize about that, and I used to think, well, it's not a big deal, like everybody does that. No, everybody doesn't do it. Um, and it takes a lot of energy, actually. It takes a lot of preparation to be in that space, right? To be able to just be present with someone, no matter what they say, and to love them.
Mm,
And I can do that. And
you
what
do
I
it
found,
beautifully. So I just want to back you up.
mhm,
You have coined the term soul chat.
mhm.
So when you're doing a soul chat, you're holding space, or is there more than that? What does a soul chat mean?
Yeah, so I'm holding the space of unconditional love, and I'm and creating a space of unconditional love, right, with that person and through visualization. And once they feel that love, anything is possible. Okay, because that's what stops us, right? Is when we're judging ourselves, when we're afraid, when we think we're wrong, when all these things. But when we actually feel unconditionally loved, we are limitless, and our minds are limitless. Like we can access information that we don't when we are stuck in judgment of ourselves, right? Um, so I help them by getting them into that place of feeling the unconditional love, and then we can have a conversation about whatever it is that's bubbling up in them
Mm,
to talk about. And soul chats look different every time. So I can't say this is what we do and then this is what,
yeah.
but it's a space of love. It is a space of, it is complete open possibility, right? It's limitless possibility. And it is a place where the person can be free to say what is truly on their heart without any fear, and knowing they're loved, feel into what is actually available to them and what is this for? How is this for them?
Mm,
And I do sometimes talk as the divine, like I will close my eyes like I do now because I can't,
can't. Yeah.
yeah, I have to close my eyes to feel it, to not get distracted by the human, but to actually share with them the message that's coming through for them, which is not from me. It's not from my brain, right?
Yeah.
I'm sharing what's coming through from the divine for them in that space. And it's a beautiful process.
It
And
is exactly the words coming out of my mouth is it's a beautiful process. I have actually been privileged enough to have this. And as somebody that creates safe spaces for others and helps others through this, not in this specific way, but in my own way, I think that I had a belief that I needed to create that for myself. And so you kind of put yourself on the back burner. It'll happen. I'll take time. I'll take time. When you created this offer and I had the opportunity to do this with you, it felt like divine. It felt like I was being placed in a room where I was just held and loved, and there was no right or wrong. There was no place to be. There was nothing to do. It was just this peace enveloping, and then this message that came through that not only, yes, it came through you, but it actually came through me as well.
Mhm.
Like it was like we were connected. And I mean, really, that's honestly, I get chills as I say that because I believe we're all connected when we can allow ourselves to get into that space, into that pause where we can really hear and listen and embody it.
Mhm.
So I need to go back to a time possibly that there was a struggle and that there might not have felt like there was an extraordinary move here. A time maybe you weren't listening to the divine or you didn't think that your gifts were any more special than anyone else. Can you just quickly take us back? I know it doesn't feel good to stay there, so let's just peek in.
Oh, well, we could pick from many parts of my life, because I felt like that for most of my life. Um, and I think I chose this path, right? And my I was the youngest of five, and my one of my older brothers had epilepsy. And at a very young age, I decided, um, like probably around 10, that I was gonna basically do everything I could to take care of him and make sure he was safe and that he didn't die earlier than he needed to. Because I think I did believe he was going to die early.
Yeah.
And um, so basically, I made myself a supporting actor, is the way I like to put it. And I have lived that role most of my life.
Wow. You talked that about a year and a half ago, some things started to shift. Do you feel that that was the extraordinary moment, or was it even before? Can you pinpoint when you came out from being the supporting actor to the person you are today?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, there is a story I tell, and it's actually in a book, that I had my own business. I worked from home. I was quite successful financially at that point, with my own business, but I worked all the time, and I was doing other people's projects, right? And I wasn't really enjoying my life. I lived in a place where I didn't know anybody yet because I had moved to buy this house. And I worked so hard that I never went out to meet anybody. And so I had these anyway, so I decide I'm like, this is up to me. This is up to me to enjoy my life. And so yeah, I started getting a lot of personal development at that point. I dove in like I've a good 5, 6 years of full-time personal development to realize that we are all just as amazing, right? No one is better than anybody else. And and that really helped me, honestly, being in rooms with people like you, right? That reflect back to me like, no, you are amazing and you do have gifts. That instead of looking at all the things that I could improve upon, right? All the faults and, the things where I wasn't perfect yet, because that was the goal, um, that I could actually focus on all the amazing, beautiful things that are already present.
Wow. You speak of unconditional love um, in a way that's really felt, like you embody it so others feel it. It's not just words coming out of your mouth, it's part of who you be. Can you help us understand what it took to actually embody that belief?
Mm. Wow, that's an interesting question. Um, I I think it's not been a one-step process, I'll tell you that. Um, most of my learning has been through relationships and being in the wrong relationships, but the right ones for the lessons, right? And getting to points where I had to choose me.
Mm,
And I had to choose to ask for help for me, right? And that you have to admit that you don't have it all figured out, you know? I did have a moment um, where I could imagine taking my life. I didn't imagine it, but I
right.
had the thought. And the only reason I probably didn't go there is because I was like, I can't put my parents through that. They already lost one child. And I lived through that. And I can't
Mm,
do that. And so I asked for help. But it took me to get to that point to ask for help, to admit that I was in an in a relationship with an alcoholic who had PTSD, who had all these issues, and I didn't know what to do and I was drowning. So I've had, those kinds of moments where you have to have unconditional love for yourself. I mean, you don't have to, but to enjoy this life at all, you do. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
It's really an awareness and then a choice once you're aware of it that there is an option. And when things are happening that are not so good, we can sometimes not see that we have options. So you even opening, to me, that spark of like that just quick, like I could take my life. And then it was like, no, that is not an option. That was also an awareness. You had to have that thought to provoke the next action and the next action and the thing that you're doing today. So we've gone through a bit of a journey. And as we get um, wrapping this up, I really would love to have you, as you took us through some of the good, some of the bad, some of the decisions that you made, what is the wish that you have for every woman that sees this
Mhm.
and or joins the group? What is there a desire for you for them?
Wow. I think I did not have this planned ahead of time or any of this really. So, what I would say is probably what I would say to myself. And I'm literally saying it to myself right now, is you are extraordinary just the way you are. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be any different. You're extraordinary just the way you are. And then you get to ask yourself from that place, what would I really love?
Wow. Thank you so much for taking us down that I felt it, embodied it. It's the truth. It's the reflection, the mirror. It's like, that's the truth. And now from this state, from this place, what would I really love? That's a permission giving statement, action step that I invite everybody that's watching this to do, and then reflect back to us of what is the answer. If I could do anything and not get it wrong, what would I love? So powerful. Any last words that you have, Carmen?
Well, I'm just going to remind myself to listen to my own advice because, as we all know, right, our messages are for us first, and we are living them. And I know I don't always make those choices from that place, right? It's so important, like you said, to get to that place first, to be in the unconditional love first, and then ask the questions about what next, right? And so
Wow, this
I
has been
invite everybody else to do that too. Yes.
such mic drop moments as I heard this. And I'm just going to reflect just a little bit before we get ready to close here. Is number one, I heard you say that to prepare yourself for this, you actually went back and listened to some of your own messages, your own downloads. And you intuitively knew to go do that. And then intuitively, we allowed this conversation to take its own energy form. And there's a lot of people that feel that they need to know the questions ahead of time, they need to prepare their answers. And I love to just show you how extraordinary you are when you really live from that place of flow and trust and faith that whatever's meant to come through is going to. And I intuitively ask questions that way. Don't get me wrong, I can judge myself on some of the ways that I do things, but I also, even as I judge myself, go, that was meant to be said in that way to spear that conversation or that triggered disruptor or whatever. So we trust. But you took us through the journeys of the ups and the downs, but to this place right now where really unconditional love is who you be. It's who you be, and it's who you ripple out into the world.
Mhm.
And as somebody that has been a recipient of your soul chat, I see that ripple in a way that I hope that I'm reflecting it back to you. This stuff matters. You are extraordinary. The gifts you bring to the table are extraordinary. And I just love you so much.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
receive all of that. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay, well, you can go back in afterwards and write down anything that you want. If you have a way to get them to connect to you or any of that, please feel free. There's been people watching and commenting. So, of course, we
Oh,
always
wonderful.
encourage you to go back and do that.
I will do that. Thank
Beautiful.